This is Nasha Kasha, a Ukrainian almanac, 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 19 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak. Susan Ferley's story first aired in 2016. Much has happened since then. We will hear all about it later in Nasha Kasha.
Я не стояла з молодим рекрутом, щоби я не стояла з молодим рекрутом, а я собі стояла, аж кури запіли на двері, воду ляла, щоби не репіли на двері, воду ляла. На двері воду ляла, на пальцях водила, щоб мати не почула, щоб не сварила, щоб мати не почула, щоб не сварила, а мати не спала, усе чисто чула, на мене насварила, сама така я була, на мене насварила, сама така я була.
So here's the Coles Notes translation for that song by Tamara Gorski from her album Vantra. It was Bella Mene Mate. It's kind of a circle of life song in which the mother smacks the daughter, smacks her with a birch cane because, the daughter says, I was out with a soldier, well, a recruit to be more precise. I tried to sneak back into the house, but the door squeaked, the rooster crowed, and then my mother, she heard it all and she said, you know what, daughter, I understand. I wasn't much different when I was your age. From one Winnipeg raised talent to another. Today's featured interview is with Susan Ferley. She is the Winnipeg-born artistic director of the Grand Theatre right here in London, Ontario. Susan Ferley є горда свого ірландського і українського коріння. Її дідусь Тарас Ферлі був вибраний до провінційної легіслатури Манітоби 1915 року. 1933 року він став членом місцевої ради міста Вінніпег. Він заіснував газету «Український голос» і був один з перших активістів КУК, котрий тоді звався Комітет українців Канади. Now, Susan Ferley, after 15 remarkable years as artistic director of London's Grand Theatre, will be stepping down at the end of this season. She is the longest-serving artistic director in the Grand Theatre's 42-year history as a professional theatre. She takes me through the storied building.
I'll make sure you can find your way out after.
That is said to have been built on a grave site. Its original owner, after withdrawing $1 million from his bank account, disappeared without a trace. Susan Ferley walks me through the darkness to the rehearsal hall, where just about anything could happen.
Are we descending into the part that was once a graveyard?
No, we're not going to go that far down.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, I believe in spirits and energy, I guess. So, you know, and we always heard about how the Grand was Ambrose's favorite theater, the Jewel. And so I could imagine if there is a spirit and energy that is Ambrose, he would enjoy being here.
Well, you get a lot of mileage out of telling stories at functions.
I'm Susan Ferley. I'm currently the artistic director at the Grand Theatre. I trained as an actor, but while I was in high school, I was directing plays. And someone mentioned to Christopher Newton, they thought I might be a director. And it was at a time when they were trying to encourage more women. There were not a lot of women directing in Canada then. So I was encouraged along the way. So there were apprenticeships at the Vancouver Playhouse. And I became a freelance director in Vancouver. And then jobs took me around largely Western Canada. I worked at the Globe in Regina as a freelance director. And it's a wonderful 400-seat theater in the round. And there's something quite magical about that theater. And when there was an opening, I applied and became artistic director there. And I was ready to go beyond single plays and provide a vision and a larger look at how you create a theater and a relationship with community. So I was there for a number of years, and then I took a break and went back to freelancing and took workshops and recharged batteries. I was working in theater training programs and directing young people in those environments, which was very invigorating. I really enjoyed that. And then an opportunity came here, interviewed, and was offered the position as artistic director here at the Grand Theatre.
30 productions, 16 high school performances. You started a playwrights circle. You just grimaced. Did I get the number wrong?
No, Playwrights Cabaret. So
okay,
yeah.
Playwrights Cabarets, the Grand Academy,
Yep.
holiday family shows,
Yep.
and 15 years, the longest run, if I could call it
Yes.
that. How do you come to the conclusion that it's time to let it go?
It's always hard. Change is hard. We resist it as human beings, I think. I just felt it was time for the theater, and certainly time for me as well.
Time to say goodbye.
How one comes to that. I think every season I would consider whether it was time during my tenure here. And I guess the last couple seasons, I realized that the theater probably needs a new energy, a new vision to reinvigorate it in the community and reinvigorate the relationship between the community and the theater. And I personally am at a place where I wanted to find ways to recharge my batteries, my creative engine.
Top of the 2015-2016 season, big announcement about what the plays would be, what the performances would be. And this will be my last year. And by the way, I have no plans.
At that time, I didn't have any specific plans. Now I know I'm going back to school, and I'm going to take a 1-year MA in actor training and coaching in England at the Central School.
Are you going to look up Prince Edward, who gave you his personal patronage at the Globe Theatre in Saskatchewan? Sorry, that may sound impertinent.
Actually, I probably won't connect with Prince Edward while I'm in England. I think I will have quite a busy schedule, as does he. Funnily enough, the Globe Theatre has an anniversary season this year, and in June, I am going back to Regina to join in the celebrations. And Prince Edward will be there.
Oh, how lovely. How lovely. How lovely. Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CJTR 91.3 FM in Regina, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, on CJSF 90.1 FM in Vancouver, and on CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo, British Columbia. You're listening to performer, pianist, composer Evan Wish, who is a friend of mine, and you hear quite a bit of him in background melodies on Nasha Kasha. Evan was born in Manitoba, in Winnipeg. He divides his time these days between France and Los Angeles. Evan has a new album, a CD. It's called Alone in a Crowd. This is one of his earlier compositions. It's called Forget Me Not Blue. Before the teaching and the career and the success came your own education and upbringing, and I sense that there's pride in both your Irish and your Ukrainian roots. Can you talk about both?
Yes. Yes, both. My grandparents on both sides came from away. I find this emotional all of a sudden. And they braved extraordinary challenges and found a life and a desire to they came and faced whatever challenges there were in order to ensure a better life for future generations. It's an extraordinary gift that they give.
Did both sides come to Manitoba?
I believe my Irish grandparents came directly. My grandparents from the Ukraine, and this is family history, and every so often I can find some references to it. But my grandparents went to the San Francisco area initially, and that was early 1900s, being part of a cooperative community there. But while there, my understanding was there was some seismic activity. They weren't there during the big San Francisco earthquake of, I think it's 1906. I don't believe they were there then. But obviously, that time there was a lot of activity before that big earthquake. And my grandmother wasn't comfortable there, and my understanding is she lost a baby. So they decided to move to Winnipeg, where they knew they had friends and a community. Obviously, they had chosen San Francisco and a lot of others of their friends and family members, I believe, chose Winnipeg and Manitoba. And so they made their way there. And yes, became very much a part of the community. And, you were asking about inspiration. And I think, one, facing challenges, that you sometimes do face when you are involved in the arts. And so I certainly take inspiration from my grandparents. The extraordinary work with community that I know was very much a part of Ukrainian grandparents, both my grandma and my grandpa. While I didn't know my grandpa at all, he died before I was even born, there was a legacy of a man who had committed himself to community and to providing leadership within that community. And on the Irish side, my dad often joked about their imagination and their vivid imagination. So I obviously took on some of that as well.
So you have a touch of the Blarney?
You might say it that way, yes.
Now, your grandfather, was that Taras Ferley?
Yes, that was my grandfather.
So he was a publisher. He started Ukrainsky Holos, the newspaper. He fought for bilingual schools.
Yeah, very active. And as I say, I didn't know him, but I know he was involved in the National Home. I know he was a member of the Legislative Assembly, the provincial governing body in Manitoba, representing an area that was in the Gimli area. There were a lot of farmers, and so he was involved that way. I believe he sat on city council at one point. So, yes, he was, from what I understand, a very dynamic person.
How has that informed your life, both your Irish background and the Ukrainian background?
My grandmother was she was a singer and involved in a lot of the choirs. And my other aunts were involved in dance. So a recognition of the importance of culture and how it can sustain and bring people together in challenging times, but also bring them together in a sense of celebration. And I know those things inform me as a theater artist. My other side, it was more my mom who I know talked about as a girl having been involved in plays. I was very shy when I was growing up, and we moved neighborhoods, and I didn't know anyone, and I can remember having a conversation with myself that if I don't do something, I'm going to be alone, and happened to choose the drama club and became involved in theater that way.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you made me cry. You say you're gonna leave. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when
Susan, how is your goodbye going to look?
It's long and gentle, and probably it's interesting. We're about to close Buddy, and one of the young actresses was talking about what a special production this was and the opportunity to work here at the Grand. And she said, goodbye is going to be hard. And I said, you don't say goodbye. You trust that paths will cross. So goodbyes are hard. And so it won't be that formal. I'm going away to school, and then I'll be back in Canada looking for work and probably living, if not in London, probably somewhere in Ontario. And we'll always take great delight to return here and see productions here. And obviously, when I do, I will see people here.
That'll be the day. Ooh, that'll be the day.
Buddy, the story of Buddy Holly, was directed by Susan Ferley and ended its run earlier in May. You heard Zachary Stevenson, who starred in that production, channeling the 1950s music legend with the song That'll Be the Day. On this episode of Nasha Kasha, you also heard Time to Say Goodbye, performed by Lesia Piasta and her son, Bogdan, from their album, which is simply titled Hope. On each program, we'll also ask our interviewees for some of their favorite music. Susan Ferley selected George Gershwin's 1919 composition, Lullaby for Strings. Here from Montreal is the Shimsa School for Irish Music, recorded live at Hurley's Irish Pub. The lone guitar player is Slavko Gudzio, founding member of the 1970s Ukrainian group Sinisty Pew.
And here he is singing a song which we dedicate to Susan Ferley's Irish roots. I hope you enjoyed our interview with her in 2016, and coming up next, you'll hear the 2020 update. We caught up with Susan just a few days ago, and she was kind enough to self-record this audio postcard.
Yeah, Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me? Yeah, Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?
Hello, this is Susan Ferley. I'm living in Port Hope, Ontario, and working at the Capitol Theatre as artistic director. I'd always hoped and dreamed to go back to school. I also hoped and dreamed to be able to live in London, England for an extended period. Those hopes and dreams were realized when I went back to school and took a year at Central School of Speech and Drama studying actor training and coaching. That proved to be challenging for me after having left the world of academia. But the experience of going back to school was also a joyous one. I was part of an international cohort of talented and inspiring fellow students, colleagues, and also amazing tutors. After I returned from England, I worked in theatre training programs. In the year I returned, I had the opportunity to work at 3 different schools, directing very different plays. I was at St. Clair College in Windsor, directing The Boyfriend, at St. Lawrence College in Brockville, directing Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods. And I was at George Brown, where I worked with the students in the theater program there on George Bernard Shaw's You Never Can Tell. I have always found myself exhilarated when I have an opportunity to work with young talents. Each program had students that inspired and invigorated me. Those were great experiences, a great opportunity that I had when I got back to Canada. It was while I was at one of the schools that a colleague mentioned they were looking for an artistic director in Port Hope, and might I be interested? And I applied and find myself now living in
a beautiful little town. I love the scale of this community with our lovely main street, a town on the lake with an amazing river running through it. The theater is charming. It was built in 1930. Originally, it was a movie theater built as an atmospheric theater. If you sit in the audience, it's as if you're sitting in a courtyard at twilight with stars twinkling overhead. So it's charming. The scale of the theater is lovely too. It's about 400 seats, just under 400 seats. That's been another gift. I've enjoyed the time in this beautiful community and working in the theater. And then in March of this year, the pandemic shut down our theater, shut down the theater here in Port Hope. It was heartbreaking, devastating. I found myself on an emotional roller coaster. I had been working on Wizard of Oz, which was planned to be part of our 2020 summer season and will now be part of our 2021 summer season. But I was working on Wizard of Oz, and I think it's the beginning of Act 2, there's a number called Optimistic Voices. The lyrics are, hold on to your breath, hold on to your heart, hold on to your hope. So I am holding on to my hope that we will again gather in our theaters, in the theater here in Port Hope, and we will share stories, artists and audience sharing stories that will inspire, invigorate us, and offer occasion to celebrate once again the sharing of stories. So I hold on to my hope. As a coda to our last interview, my brother found an article about my grandparents, Taras and Anatolia Ferley. It recounts their involvement in theater. They created for and with the Ukrainian community a production, a play. And my grandfather was the director and my grandmother was an actress. Anyway, lovely story of family.
I wish to gratefully acknowledge that partial funding for Nasha Kasha is provided by the Shevchenko Foundation and the Ukrainian Credit Union. I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak, back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.